The Bible Treasury. A monthly magazine of papers on scriptural subjects. Article 30, Volume 12, 1878, and 1879. Scripture Queries and Answers. 3. 1879. 368, Question. Daniel 9 verse 24. Having lately seen it stated, in print, that Dr. Pusey denies Holy of Holies to be the right rendering in Daniel 9 verse 24, and asserts an all-holy, alluding to the Messiah, to be the true one, I should be glad of information on a point of so much prophetic importance. P. It cannot be spoken of the natural Holy of Holies, which in contrast to the holy place is always the Holy of Holies, never Holy of Holies. Still, less is it the material temple as a whole, since the temple, as a whole, is never called by the name of a part of it. Holy of Holies, that is, lit. Holiness of holinesses. All holiness is a ritual term, used to express the exceeding holiness which things acquire by being consecrated to God. It is never used to describe a place, but is always an attribute of the thing, and in one place, of the person who is spoken of. Pusey on Daniel, pages 179 and 180. Answer. I cannot find that any person is called in the Old Testament Kodesh HaKodeshim, Daniel 9 verse 24, things are, where characteristically described. The innermost part of the sanctuary is properly called Kodesh HaKodeshim, Exodus 26 verse 33, in Ezekiel 45 verse 3 the sanctuary is called Holy of Holies without the article. For the prophet there writes of the most holy sanctuary, not of the sanctuary and the most holy place, as the authorized version would represent it. With Ezekiel, then, before us we have a precedent for Daniel, the describing the sanctuary, and, looking at the subject of his prayer for the sanctuary, verse 17, city and people, verses 18 and 19, the answer of the angel is in full keeping with his request. 7 heptads are determined upon thy people, and upon thy city, at the end of which the sanctuary will be anointed. I take it the authorized version gives the sense, though the anathrus form is not the usual one where the house is described. So I should dissent from Dr. Pusey's views. The context would lead me to accept the authorized version as correct in making it the sanctuary, and not the Messiah. S. 1879. 380, Question. Whose are the offenses in this word? Offenses in the world, or in the church? R. H. Answer. 1. To judge from the scope of the chapter, it would seem to have to do with them that are within, rather than with them that are without. Its counsels and warnings are addressed by the Lord to the disciples, not to the multitude. It is manifestly offenses on their own part that these are admonished to deal with in verses 8 and 9, and if the denunciation against the offenders of the little ones in verse 6 be somewhat general in character, the warning of verse 10, with the parable employed to enforce it, are clearly for the admonition of the disciples. Of the bearing of verses 15 to 20 on questions within the assembly, there can, I presume, be no doubt, and Peter's question in verse 21, how oft shall my brother sin against me? Along with the Lord's own application in verse 35, if ye from the heart forgive not everyone his brother, determine with sufficient precision the application of the intervening parable. 2. The word woe, though frequently denunciatory, as in the last clause, is not always so, but is also commiserative, as in Matthew 24 verse 19, Mark 13 verse 17, Luke 21 verse 23, Revelation 8 verse 13, Revelation 12 verse 12. 3. If I apprehend the word apo, from out of, aright, as indicating rather the source from whence, or occasion of, than the procuring cause or ground, this would confirm the thought that the world is not here the object of denunciation on account of its own misdeeds, but of commiseration, in view of evils to arise to it from, or out of, offences elsewhere. 4. If scandalon be that part of a trap or snare, by contact with which the game brings down the trap fall or causes the snare to close upon it, nothing could be more graphically descriptive of the effect upon the world, as well as on many within, of scandals in the professing Church of God. Such offences are not in themselves the snares in which Satan entraps souls, but they are truly to thousands the stumbling blocks or touchpins which give effect to the snares and serve to precipitate into the pitfalls of unbelief and infidelity. 5. Finally, this view finds confirmation in the following clause of the verse: it must needs be that offenses come. If offenses in the world were in question, they were already around on every hand, but if offenses in that new thing about to be set up, the assembly, or church of God, be the matter in hand, that thing in which, according to its ideal or theory, no offense should be found, then how needful and appropriate the warning. In view of these things, I lean to the conclusion that the offenses here are offenses in the professing church, and that the opening woe of the verse is a long-drawn sigh from the Lord's loving heart over the foreseen confusion among his own, and the consequent breakdown and obscuration of the testimony that ought to have shone as the light of the world in his absence, that through it the world might have believed that the Father had sent him. John 17 verse 21, Alas! Alas! How dreadfully prophetic has that compassionate woe been! How much of blessing has been hindered by the scandals the world has seen among professing Christians! Ah,